Hello and welcome to the very first episode of my new podcast series, Reality Vomit, where I, Mac Taylor, will go through, well, let's just say the plan is a shit ton of reality television. I'll try to cover the new things that air, but I'll definitely try to go back and just hit as much shit as possible. But if, say, like a new season of Big Brother or Survivor or something comes on, I may take time to hit that up while it's airing, just so I don't have to go back and do it all in a big chunk. But right now, we're going to be talking about The Amazing Race, Season 1. This is not a show I've kept up with over the years. It's something my mother has watched more so in the past few years. But I did watch the last season that was on, and that definitely got me intrigued enough to want to go back and hit them all up. So I thought, what a perfect way to start Reality Vomit than to do a season of The Amazing Race. So here we go. The first season is so different than what we see today. And I'm curious to track that progress from season 1 to season 32. What's different? What changed? What worked? What didn't work? Who were the best? Who were the worst? Let's talk about season 1, episode 1. We will be talking about the first 2 episodes of The Amazing Race season 1 because 2 hours of television is enough for one podcast. So we start out, we have 11 teams of 2 that will be racing across the world. We have Frank and Margarita, who are a separated couple who thought, what a way to see if our relationship can work again than traveling around the world with just each other and a camera crew. That is a big fucking test, I've got to say. At first, I heard that, I was like, ooh, yeah, they're not going to get along at all. Mixed results, not terrible in the first 2 episodes. We'll get to that, but that's Frank and Margarita. We have Paul and Amy, an engaged couple. Again, what a way to test it. We have roommates / teachers, Kim and Leslie. Another dating couple, Lenny and Karen. So not even engaged, just dating. Like that's a big test. Grandparents, Dave and Margareta. Dave is also a former Vietnam vet. I love this is one of the cutest old couples I've ever seen. Like I am rooting for them. I've never seen this season. I actually do not know the outcome, and I am rooting for Dave and Margareta so hard because they are just so adorable. We have Matt and Anna, an army couple. Joe and Bill, a life partner duo who are calling themselves Team Guido after their dog. Love Team Guido. They have an enthusiasm not really seen in early reality television. So they were definitely, I think subsequent seasons wanted a Team Guido each time. Patricia and Brenda, they are working moms who just want to, get a little time away from the family and have an adventure, like, as they're getting older in their lives. I think that is a wonderful thing, first of all. Talking about dating couples, testing some things. Well, these are just friends wanting to have an adventure. I think that's one of the most innocent ways to enter the Amazing Race, we have Rob and Brennan. They are besties / lawyers. So, super serious, not a lot of jokes coming out of the lawyers. We have Nancy and Emily, a mother and daughter. Nancy is the very nurturing, let's think before we act mother, and Emily is the let's go, jump in, don't really think about it kind of daughter. And they have a very interesting dynamic that will be tested by The Amazing Race. And then our last team is Drew and Kevin, former fraternity brothers and best friends. I love Drew and Kevin as well. The way that they interact with each other is just television gold. Anytime they're on screen, I'm like, this is going to be interesting. And, especially, like I said, The Amazing Race came out in 2003? 2002, somewhere in there. Very early reality television. Might have been 2001. Either way, like, we were still finding out what worked in casting, So a lot of these teams are pretty decent casting. So they start out in New York City. And we have this is interesting thing about early Amazing Race is they have to like book their own flights. And when you're going from New York to South Africa, that's kind of a nightmare. So they have like 5 different like options of places to book flights, and like they're just calling around, and it's kind of a mess. And I could see why we transition now, watching the last season, to just we have the flights booked, and based on your placements, you'll be on certain planes. That just makes way more sense that the show handled that, because we now more drama is put in, more of the show's meat is put into the tasks and how they can complete them, and more of the teams that way instead of the travel portion. It's interesting to see, but I understand from a show running perspective why that happened. And Paul, like, he has this weird fucking thing where they're trying to book a plane. He's like, well, let's just take a train or something. They're like, but that'll be slower. And he's like, yeah, but we'll save our money. And she's like, yeah, but we'll be last. He's like, yeah, but we'll save more money. She's like, but we'll lose. And then we're out of the race, and money doesn't fucking matter. It's $90, Paul. We have $90 per leg of the race, which is super cheap. Like, that's not a lot of money. But we can't finish last. That's the whole point of the Amazing Race. Up until the final leg, just don't finish last. That's it. That's your only goal. Just finish within the provided placements. That isn't the last one. That's it. And Paul is more concerned about $90. And I'm like, bro, this is $1 million race. Like, let's fucking get it together. So they're heading to Johannesburg, South Africa. And again, it's a chaotic mess. It's just, their people are having an emotional breakdown just trying to book flights. And Nancy and Emily are bickering back and forth because Emily's like, let's go. Let's not think about it. And Nancy is trying to, like, get, kind of ask around. And she's doing a very mom thing. She's just trying to get all the info before they go. And Emily's like, let's just go. This is a race. And I understand both perspectives. This is usually in an argument, I tend to lean one way or the other. But I totally both sides have a valid point. Yes, we are racing for $1 million. We should definitely move forward. However, if we move forward and fuck everything up, our speed won't matter because we'll still be behind because we have messed something up. So there needs to be a balance that needs to be found between these two if they're going to be successful in this trip around the world. Frank and Margarita, they talk about wanting to rekindle their... They have a daughter, and they've been separated for, they said, a year. And they would like to... If this doesn't work for them now, then it's clear that they will not work outside of this. And at first, I was like, ooh, boy, I wouldn't want to do that. Because as someone who's been separated, I would never want to go on the Amazing Race with that person I was separated from. However... they have a child. They're trying to make it work. I guess this is a pretty big test of that. I guess if it won't work on the Amazing Race, it probably won't work in general. I guess it is a decent idea. It's just not something I would do. And Team Guido is actually pretty proficient travelers. They looked at all the airports and seemed to have a general knowledge of them, and looked at the flights, and if they were connecting to this, well, that's too much connecting. It's too much time. Just try to get the one with the least amount of changeover and things like that. From what the edit shows, they're the only team that really thought that through, and because of that, they're in the lead. They're in the head of the pack, and they even said though, a lead right now doesn't really mean much of anything, which it's true. It doesn't. But this is the first season of the Amazing Race, so they're figuring it out as we, the audience, are figuring it out. So no one really knows what shit means in the beginning. Now you can look back at all these seasons and understand how to handle the beginning of the race, but they don't know. So it's an interesting dynamic for a first season of a reality show that the audience and the players are on pretty much the same level. Like, if you've never watched an episode, there's never been an episode to watch. So the players don't know. It's interesting to me. And Frank is like super upset that the Guidos are in front of him and Margarita. He's like, if we're not first, he basically Ricky Bobby's it. He's like, we're not first, we're last. And it's like, well, actually, no. Only if you're last, because that team goes home. Everybody else is gonna stay in. So it was this kind of a weird dynamic that he's just so upset. Like, he's even, like, shit-talking the Guidos. Like, they dress the same. They have stupid smiles. They look stupid. They're fucking goofballs. Why are they beating us? I'm like, bro, it's okay. You're team number 2. And more importantly, you're on the first plane with the Guidos. You can still pass them at any point in the race. You just have to keep your even Margarita's like, why are you upset? We're ahead of the pack. It's just weird. Like, you don't want to cause... I can kind of see where their tensions as a couple lie. He's very high-strung and a stubborn person, and she can't, like, it seems to, like, she can't handle that pressure from him. So we're seeing a little bit early on, like, why their shit don't work. So Paul and Amy are very behind because I believe they took a train or something. And she's like, oh, man, we're behind. And he's like, yeah, but we only spent like $3. Everybody else spent like $30. And I'm like, Paul, shut the fuck up about money. That is the least of your concerns right now. You need to go, especially if you think you're in last place. You need to not be in last place. That's why I've said like twice now, don't be last. Dave and Margarita. See, we have Margarita and Margareta. So that's gonna mess with me a little bit, talking about names wise in this podcast. But Dave and Margareta, they're the only team that's like completely cool with being in the middle. Like, they couldn't be more thrilled that they're not last. And in a game where you just don't be last, like, they're very content with that, and it's adorable. Like, they see teams behind them and they're like, oh man, at least we're in the middle. And it's like, oh, that's awesome. And so, like, once they get off the plane, there's just a mad car dash where the Guidos are in front and no one is passing the Guidos. But there is like a huge rush for second place. Like, Frank and Margarita are like zooming around the lawyers, and the lawyers are getting pissed. Like, Paul and Amy almost crash at one point because of the traffic jam that is caused by these teams trying to pass each other on the road. This, like, narrow dirt road. So already there's just a huge... it's hard to follow a little bit. You can't really tell what team is where. And unlike the new seasons, they don't tell you. Like, now it'll say, like for instance of last season, it'll say, like, Kaylin and Haley currently in 5th place, or like Will and James currently in 2nd place. It does not do that here. We just see people doing shit and kind of have to be like, well, I think based on what they're doing right now, the other people have already done that, so they're ahead of them. It's kind of hard to follow. It's kind of a mess. And Frank is just out of control about first. Like, he is being a little reckless trying to gain 1st place. But also, it doesn't make it easier that they have to get their own directions. So, like, they have to ask locals constantly where shit is. And a lot of these people, they don't speak English very well or at all. Or are they very friendly? Because they're not super thrilled that Americans are like, hey, you know where this thing is? Like, so it's pretty hard for people to navigate stuff. It's not like now where your driver just hits a GPS and you just go to your location. And Team Guido, they're in the lead. And so you always hear them shouting, Team Guido, as they're doing something, and it's super adorable. Like, it's, like I said, they have a very high energy that is not commonly seen amongst early reality show contestants. So it's refreshing. And Emily is like rushing Nancy too much. Your mom's older. hard for her to run, especially when most of this cast is like in their 20s, 30s, 40s. Kind of hard for her to keep up with that. So she's just like, come on, get moving. I'm like, but it's your mom. Settle down a little bit. If I'd said something like that to my mom, she probably would have punched me and we would not be anywhere near finishing. So basically, the task that they're going to is at a gorge. And you must zip line across, then bungee jump in this canyon to get to the next place. And so they go across what's called like the knife's edge. It's like this big path along a waterfall, and you get super wet. So everybody's wet. They're carrying these heavy backpacks. They're tired. It's been a long day. A couple of days, actually, at this point. And the frat bros argue in like a very endearing way. Like you can tell this is just their relationship with each other as friends. Like at one point, one of them like accidentally buys a pamphlet, and he's like, "You know not to take something, you'll have to pay for it." And he's like, "I didn't know you had to pay for it." He's like, "In New York City, when do you ever take something from someone without paying for something?" And he's like, "Oh, whatever." Like this guy, he's a friggin' idiot. I love it. I love their dynamic. Like I said, it's TV gold. David Margaretta and the lawyers have a mad dash for who is going to get the fast forward. At every leg, there's going to be a fast forward where if you get to it first, you skip all the tasks and you go straight to the finish line. Now, in this particular one, there's not a lot of tasks, so I think it was kind of a waste for the lawyers, especially since the lawyers were in like third place at this point, to go for a fast forward in leg one, when you should probably save it for like when you're toward the back of the pack and you need to get ahead. Like I understand David and Margaretta going for it. They're the older couple. It's going to be harder for them if they can get up front and have room to like move around. That's better for them. But for the lawyers, it didn't make a lot of sense. But the lawyers get to it first and kind of waste the fast forward on themselves. So they get to bypass the zip line and the jump and go straight to the finish. And the lawyers are giving like American flags and money. They're like, well, we're grateful for them to let us in our country, which is a very nice thought, but kind of odd to give them American flags. Most countries aren't super fond of that. Like, you can give them money or like candy or something, but this is the flag's a little on the nose. It was in good thoughts. They were good hearted, but it just was not the most well thought out thing, I thought. So the frat bros, like one of them is like, "Excuse me, sir, could you please give me directions to the nearest?" And the other's like, "Get in the car." And he's like, "Don't yell at me in front of them. You have to be polite to them." And he's like, "This fucking guy." And he's like, what directions did you get from him? He said, "We're going to go straight, take a right, and there's a big tree." This idiot back here with his big tree talk. How are we supposed to know what the big tree is? I love it. I freaking love it. So Frank basically helps Margarita with the heights thing. She's kind of afraid of heights, but in their own, you could tell it's within their own way. Like, this would not have motivated me because he's kind of being a little bit of an asshole, but she gets it. Like, she gets through it. They help each other through this. And Paul and Amy are at each other's throats, where he's like, he sees the heights. He's like, "Well, we're in last place anyway. Might as well just quit." And she's like, "No, we're not gonna quit. Like, we're gonna stick this out. You're jumping off this damn gorge." Rob and Brandon, they get their fast forward. They get to the finish line. They are team number one. It would be a shame if you got the fast forward and weren't team number one, but they are team number one at the finish of leg one. The teachers are super afraid of this jump. Like, this girl's, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Leslie, but it might have been Kim. It was kind of hard to tell them apart. But she's like shaking and like, "I can't do this," but she does it. She jumps. Nobody doesn't jump. And people are having trouble getting directions from locals because they're like, how do these people not know where things are where they live? And it's like, well, maybe they're not great with English. And also maybe you're not like things might get lost in translation too. Like maybe what you're saying doesn't make sense to them. Maybe they call it something else, you know? Like there's a gas station in my hometown that was called Country Market, and it used to be a co-op, so everybody still called it the co-op, even though it hadn't been a co-op in years. So if someone came into town new and was like, where's the Country Market? And you're like, the co-op's over there. And then I'm like, why are you saying co-op? Things like that. Like, shit like that happens. So, like, the fact that they're like, well, these people don't know anything. It's like, no, maybe you're just not translating great. Or, you know, maybe you need to calm down a little bit. So Paul is, like, terrified of these heights. Like, for as tough as he acts, he's kind of bad with heights. And right now it's a battle for last. The frat bros, the army couple, and Paul and Amy are in the back. And it's really gonna be close to see who's going home here. At least the edit would have us believe. I don't know how close it actually was, but nevertheless, this is what we're working with. The Guidos come in number 2. Frank and Margarita in 3rd. Lenny and Karen in 4th. Pat and Brenda in 5th. The teachers in 6th. The grandparents in 7th. Paul and Amy finished 8th. The frats number 9th. And the mother and daughter, who I didn't even know were in the back, were almost eliminated in 10th place. Which means that Matt and Anna, the army couple, were eliminated because they were not good with directions, and they just seemed to really be slow. Like, they were very far behind. Like, the only, like, people we knew they were kind of close to were Paul and Amy at one point. Was the zip line. But they lost them there because Paul and Amy managed to jump from 10th place to 8th place. They passed the frat bros and the mother-daughter. Like, I don't know what Emily and Nancy were doing, but I thought they were in the middle, more toward, like, 7-6. And they, like I said, they were one mishap away from losing this thing. So it was very interesting to me. Like, when they showed up, I'm like, oh yeah, they hadn't finished yet. Like, I was kind of shocked. So yeah, Paul and Anna are done. They didn't really give me much as far as television goes. Like, they were both kind of quiet. So I was totally cool with them going home. I didn't dislike them. I wasn't rooting for them to fail. It was much better television if they just weren't there. So they're and they weren't even like that, like, bummed about it. Like, they're like, you're out. And he's like, it's a bummer. Well, that was fun. And it's like, oh, okay. It's kind of a lot of awkward silence. Also, like, Phil wasn't at the mat until the elimination. Whereas, like, now he's the only one. Like, they have the person that welcomes you to the place, and then Phil tells you your placements, and you have a little bit of a conversation with Phil. And at this point, it was like the other person welcomes you and tells you your place, and then Phil shows up to tell the team that they're going home. And it's like, what is happening? This is, like, I'm glad they changed that. It was a lot of awkward pauses in there. So that moves us in episode number 2. The teams leave 12 hours after they arrived at the pit stop. So if you arrived, like, the lawyers were first. So they arrived at, like, 11:23 in the morning, and so 11:23 at night. And whereas, like, the first teams have a little bit of a disadvantage because they're leaving around midnight, 1 in the morning. So you can't ask people for directions because hardly anyone's out at 1 in the morning. And the people who are out at 1 in the morning, you should not stop and ask directions from. So it's a little sketchy to be leaving at this time. And I'm not a big fan that they let them do that. And they're looking for a museum that's actually very close to the village. Like, it's a short walk from the village. And no one knows that. So everyone's, like, getting in cars and leaving like it's out somewhere else. And they even say no one else, only the villagers know where this thing is. Everyone else just knows where the village is. So it's like it's a sneaky trick the Amazing Race did there. They're really setting these people up for failure. So the first 3 teams that finished the day before, Frank and Margarita, Team Guido, and the Lawyers team up for an alliance. Which, if you saw season 32, a lot of people were like, alliances aren't meant to be in the Amazing Race. But here in season 1, there was one. We'll see it's not very successful, but there was one. So, there's always been an alliances in the Amazing Race. Just to varying degrees. And Margarita basically says that she saw a sign for the museum way out that way, which is false because there's no signs. So they go way out of the way, and then she's like, you know what? I don't think I saw a sign. And Frank just dogs her. It was like, wow, that was really stupid of you. Like, I had to punch you in the head. I'm like, yeah, it's your partner, though. Like, her failure is your failure, so you should probably try to get it together a little bit. But, so they all get turned around, and we're like, oh, you know what? It says acquainted with the village. It's probably in the village. So they all turn around and head back. And a lot of the teams that head out, they're having the same problem. Of they head out, are like, fuck, it's back at the village. Now they turn around and go back to the village. And the moms, as they head out, they're talking more about wanting to have this adventure together and how much this means to them. And it makes me like really root for them as well. And everyone's having trouble with getting this thing. And the next task, so the Alliance gets there first, and they find that the next task is it's near or far. So either you go nearby to a wildlife preserve and take 3 photos of hard-to-find animals, or you go to a far-off preserve and take an easy photo of an elephant. And everyone takes near. And I'm like, I don't know, maybe I would have taken the far, because it's just, you're guaranteed. You're going to walk up, bam, go. But it's farther away. But after the whole mix-up, an easy bet would have been, I understand not wanting to go far after they already took all the extra time. If they just walked straight to the museum, maybe they would have thought about that. But I understand the panic. So nobody chooses far. So the moms decide they're going to go, they're having trouble finding the museum. Like, let's just go to the fast forward. So they have to go to this like kayak kind of place and go down the river and get the fast forward that way. And they're the only team that's going after it too. And I kind of understand their thought process in getting this. It makes more sense than the Lawyers did the first episode. So Dave and Margarita actually asked the locals first before leaving. And a lot of the back teams, the teams toward the end, they're like, oh, well, someone said it was over here. And Dave and Margarita are like, yeah, they said it's over here. So they all kind of team up and avoid a lot of miscommunication and go straight to the museum. Just to get past this point. Because at this point, people are having a lot of trouble. The frat bros, they talk about like, yeah, we're brothers. I love this guy, but I don't let him in my apartment because you bring your friends and they don't take the shoes off and they wreck your place. It's like, I love this guy, but he's never coming in my fucking house. It's like, it's an odd dynamic. So the back of the pack teams get there and they decide where they're going. And the frat bros are like the second to last team to get to the pictures. And this is another little funny moment with them where the one guy's like, hey, what about this elephant? And the other guy's like, what about it? And he's like, do we take this little elephant? He's like, no, it's decorate. Get over here. It's like, why? Like, you thought that the prop, like, there was just a little prop on the table, and you thought you might need, like, they're making these people solve riddles, so I understand being like, does this mean something? What is this? It's a fun little moment. So, the Alliance is moving very fast. They're getting their pictures done. By the time most teams are getting their cameras and leaving, they're almost done with this first task. And they really are just extending their lead between the top 3 teams and the other teams. So the moms get to the fast forward, and they get to bypass the tasks and go straight to the pit stop. And the frat bros, they think goats are like part of the wildlife. They're like, oh, is that this animal? No, it's a goat, you idiot. And it's like, I could, if I could have just followed them the whole episode, I probably would have, just because of some of the one-liners that come out of these guys, man. And like, there's a rhino like by their car, and it kind of looks a little pissed. And Nancy's like running out, trying to take a picture of it. Emily's like, get in the car, get in the car. She's like, I need to take a picture of it. I'm like, Nancy, be careful. Like, she's talking about she's the careful one. You're charging a rhino. Again, really adorable. So they drop the pictures off to a chief who spits on them as part of tradition. It's kind of like in Ace Ventura what nature calls. Like, they spit on someone they like. And they get a clue to go to the Eiffel Tower. And the Guidos apparently lived in Paris for a while, so they're very familiar not only with speaking the language, but familiar with the territory. And that's going to give them a huge advantage heading into the next leg. And the frat bros come to the chief, and unlike everybody else who just does the ceremony, one of them just walks up. He's like, "Here, Chief, here is a picture of the zebras, Chief. Chief, here is the rhino, Chief. Chief, here is the buffalo, Chief." Now, like, did someone tell you that you have to start and end every sentence with Chief? And also, you just skipped the tradition, just hand this guy shit. It just felt so. It was like, that's such a New York thing to do, to just walk up and be like, here's the shit, I'm going. So, and it's like the same problem in the last episode. It's hard to get tickets to Paris from South Africa, like, in an instant. So people are having like legit mental breakdowns, like crying and having to have like customs or someone step in and like actually get these tickets for them, because they're just, it's hard to do. It's hard to get these tickets. And Amy and the teachers girls get into a thing because the teachers were trying to get tickets, and Amy walked up and she's like, she's not with us. And it did sound a bit snarky. I will say that. It sounded pretty snarky. But Amy just goes the fuck off. Like that. It has a huge mental breakdown about it. Like, wants to fight them about it, and it's like, okay, settle down. Let's get your tickets and move on, you know? And Paul's like agging on, like, yeah, punch her in the jaw, like, punch her in the mouth. And it's like, settle down, Paul, all right? Why don't you talk about the money you can save? And the Guidos, they hear that the lawyers have never left America. And they're like, well, if you're not traveled at all, then clearly this alliance means nothing to us. And, like, kind of a dick move. They just drop the alliance. Like, we're done with it. Because the first they're like, well, maybe we're not with Frank and Margarita because they're kind of, like, hard to control. And then, like, oh, yeah, we're not teaming with these guys either. It's like, you could just pretend you're in the alliance. Like, you don't have to actively do a lot, but just don't sprint. Like, I understand that they're like, it's going to hinder us to have to keep behind with them. But at the same time, they just cut the ties. Like, easy. And it puts a sour taste in the lawyer's mouth in particular. So the moms finished number one, and it was nice to see them just get their little moment of celebration. Now they have wiggle room. If a leg goes wrong with them next, they can fall to the middle of the pack. Right now they're in the head of the pack, so they have maneuverability, where originally they were in the middle, and if they fell behind, they could lose the race. So they have a little more leeway and a little more longevity in this game. So everybody else has to go to the second floor of the Eiffel Tower, find a flag on the arch, go to the arch for the pit stop. But you have to, the clue says monumental. So you have to look for a monument with a flag that says monumental on it, or monument or something on it. So like it's a riddle in a way, but it's not super difficult. Like, the hard part is just finding the flag. But figuring out everything else isn't. But Lenny is having immense trouble. Like he's really not even looking at the viewfinder. He's like, "What? Hey, what monuments are around here?" And it's like you got to find the flag. You can't just. You know how many monuments are in Paris? Paris, like yeah, there's a lot of shit there. So you got to be more thorough with your investigation. And the frat bros are cracking jokes because the one guy, the chunkier guy, was like, "Hey, I'll take the stairs," and then he comes back down. He actually was very fast about it. Comes back downstairs and because he gets up there and asks around and finds the flag very quickly. But he comes down, he's like, "I'm an idiot. I should have never taken these stairs." And he's like, "This guy always keeping a sense of humor. Gotta love it." And Lenny, he just kind of gives up. Like he comes back down, he's like, I didn't see a flag," and she's like, "What do you mean you didn't see a flag?" He's like, "Yeah, I didn't see a flag." She's like, "You looked, right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I looked, didn't see a flag." She's like, "Well, you can't just quit. Get back up there." So he just walks back up there, and they have huge tension. He's like, "Shut up!" And so she's mad, he's mad. And then we get another huge drama moment as the teachers bribe a cab driver to kick Paul and Amy out and take the teachers instead. So now Amy is super pissed, like, and I kind of understand. Like, you probably didn't need to do this, but it was great television. I'm glad they did it, but it was kind of a dick move, and I do understand Amy and Paul being upset because they, in front of them, bypassed a line, threw some money at a cab driver, and jetted off with their cab. And now Paul's like, "We should just quit. We're in last place." And she's like, "I'm not quitting." He's like, "Well, if I quit, you got to quit too. So how about that?" And it's like, dude, quit being such a bitch. Like, just fucking do the race. Like, stop. Every time there's like a little bit of an inconvenience, he's like, "Well, I guess I'll quit." And it's like, just shut the fuck up, Paul. I hate Paul and Amy. I hope they leave soon. So Paul goes up to the second floor of the Eiffel Tower and looks around for like 5 minutes. He's like, "Oh, I can't find anything. I'm quitting. I'm done." And I guess a producer talked him out of it because he's back in the next scene. But it's like, dude, you looked for like a couple of minutes. Like, chill. Like, you gotta A, be calm, and B, this race isn't easy. It's called the Amazing Race. It's not called the mediocrely easy race. Like, you're gonna have challenges here, man. The Guidos arrive in second place and actually slip on the mat because it's raining. It was kind of like, "Oh shit, you okay?" kind of moment. But the Guidos maintain their second place. The Lawyers come in third. Frank and Margarita in fourth. So, the top three teams finished in the top three that weren't the fast forward teams. And Lenny and Karen get all messed up because Lenny asks someone, and they tell him Notre Dame, or the Louvre is. The Louvre, or however you say it. So they go there, and it's not there because there was no flag there, and so they have to go all the way back. And they get in a huge fight because obviously she's upset because he's being sloppy, and he's being upset because she's upset. So it really looks like they're going home. The frat bros get fifth place, so they have now moved up. They're a little bit ahead now. They did really good in this leg. Dave and Margareta getting sixth place, and they're stoked about that. They're like, maintaining the middle. Paul and Amy get seventh, so they've moved up a little bit. And the teachers go like all the way up, so they have to go all the way back down in a second. And actually, this is where they fuck up, I think, the worst. They help Lenny. They tell Lenny where the flag is. So now they're racing Lenny and Karen in the back of the pack. What they should have done is found the flag, left Lenny up there to inevitably fail because Lenny is really bad at finding shit. And then the nail in the sister's coffin is that a cab driver wants more money from them, and like they get in a big argument with him, and they get dropped off in the wrong place, and they just end up way behind. And it really does seem like we're screwed. Especially since Paul and Amy did so well, who they stole the cab from. So Emily and Nancy get 8th place, and Lenny and Karen, by the seat of their pants, thanks to the sisters, have ended up in number 9, which means the teachers come in last and are eliminated. What an episode for them, though. From arguing with the couple to stealing their cab to arguing with the cab driver because they didn't have enough money because of the bribe. Like, that karma hit them hard with that cab bribe. Like, they got hit later that day. And I felt bad for them because I genuinely thought Lenny and Karen are done. That there's no way they're going to be able to make up this time. But you helped it. If you'd have left Kenny up there, he'd probably still be up there to this day trying to find that flag. And that ends the first 2 episodes of The Amazing Race. So let me know in the comments what you think. Have you seen this season or watch it, and let me know what you guys think. What do you look for? Why do you like The Amazing Race? Let's get a conversation going in that comment section. I want to have those conversations with you guys. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Guys, I'm going to be making so many podcasts and videos in 2021. It's going to be ridiculous because I have no social life, so I might as well be spending it talking with you guys about TV and movies. Again, my name is Mac Taylor. Stay safe and stay nerdy.